Hey everybody, welcome back to another edition of our Luke Deep Dive. Today we are finishing chapter 12, looking at verses 35 all the way to 54. And this section is a continuation of Jesus talking to his disciples. We see this all the way back earlier in the chapter, where Jesus is telling his disciples to not trust in wealth or possessions or store up for themselves and be greedy, but in fact to trust their everything to God, that God will be the one to provide. So they don't need to worry or have anxiety, because when you put your trust in God, everything that he has belongs to you. Following this, we jump into the verses that we have today, which is all about this idea of readiness. And Jesus here is again talking to his disciples, and he gives a couple of illustrations about being ready. And what he's talking about here is about Jesus's imminent departure. We know later on, as we keep reading, Jesus is going to be crucified. 3 days later, he's going to rise again. He's going to give his spirit to his followers to keep doing the work that he's called them to do, and to be a seal and a reminder of God's presence in their lives. And then he's going to heaven, where he's going to prepare a place for all those who believe. And so, and then he promises that one day he's going to return. This section here is talking about that upcoming departure, and then the return that Jesus will eventually do. This is also known as the second coming of Jesus. And so Jesus gives this series of teachings or parables to prepare his followers for the in-between space of after we celebrate the resurrection of Jesus from the dead and his victory over sin and Satan, and then awaiting his return to culminate and finalize his kingdom. What do we do in that in-between space? This is what these series of parables here at the end of chapter 12 really have us focus on. And so Jesus gives a couple of illustrations. He says to gird your loins, or to be dressed and ready for service. He says to keep your lamps burning. And then he gives a series of illustrations of servants who have been given responsibilities by their master, and the master leaves on a long journey, and his kind of return date is not known to the servants, but they've been given this job to do in his absence, and they're expected to do that, to be faithful in serving him. And Jesus then goes on to explain the benefits of being a faithful servant while the master is away. That he will, when he comes back, recline at the table. He will wait on them. It will be good for those servants. And this is something that it's like the promised reward, that while I've been gone, you have been faithful, and I'm excited, and we're going to celebrate together. And this is the promise for all those who continue to serve and follow their master while he is away. But then Jesus goes on, and it kind of gets this question from Peter about, who are you talking about here, Jesus? What is this all about? And then Jesus gives a series of different people, different servants who have different responses to their master being away. The first one is the faithful servant again, when the master returns, the faithful servant has been busy doing his master's business, and he says, "Truly I tell you, I'm going to put that person in charge of all of my possessions." This goes back to what we just read earlier about not being anxious or worrying or trying to gain wealth or possessions for yourself, because when you put your trust in Jesus, in the master, everything God has belongs to you, so you don't need to worry. And so here Jesus says, if you are faithful, you're continuing to serve me, well, when I come back, I'm going to put you in charge of everything, right? That's great. This is what we want. But then he goes on and gives another category of servant. He says that there's a servant who says to himself, my master has been away for a long time. And then this servant takes on the personality of what he thinks the master ought to be doing. He's bossing around the other servants. He's beating them. He's doing that to both men and women. He's taking advantage of people. He's gluttonous. He's eating, drinking, getting drunk. He's doing all these things to, these wicked things to fill his own life up. But in reality, he knows what the master has given him to do. And yet he is now assuming that my master's gone a long time. He's not coming back. I'm going to be in charge, and I'm going to do things my way, and everyone's going to listen to me, and I'm going to do whatever the heck I want. Well, the story then goes on. It says the master will come back one day when no one expects, and when he finds that unfaithful servant, he will cut him to pieces and assign him a place with the unbelievers. This is a really harsh criticism. The word there is to dismember or to cut someone in two. That's a pretty graphic picture, right? So this is a servant who's been given responsibility, who knows the master, who knows what he's supposed to be doing. But while the master's away, instead, he promotes himself, he does whatever he wants, and he doesn't follow the master's instructions. He takes advantage of other people. This is someone who you think is called to follow Jesus, but now that Jesus is away, well, I'm going to put myself in charge. I'm going to tell people what to do. We might think of it as a leader, a church leader, a ministry leader, or just a disciple who decides, you know what? The rules don't apply to me while Jesus is gone. Sure, I believe in him, but I can do whatever the heck I want in this lifetime until he returns. And Jesus then does return in this story, and the end is not good. It's not like this person is still welcomed into the kingdom. No, they're dismembered. They're cut in half. You may remember that when Abraham and God make a covenant all the way back in Genesis, where God's going to be his God and Abraham is going to be his people, they make a covenant. Covenant means to cut. And this is shown graphically in that story in Genesis by taking these animals and cutting them in half, and they put one half on the animal on one side, one on the other side, and both God and Abraham walk through the middle. The symbolism of this is, if I do not uphold my end of the covenant to be faithful to you and to serve you, then may I be like one of these animals that's cut in half and cut off from you. And this is the symbol that Jesus is using here. If you're someone that has said, I follow Jesus, but you're just doing whatever the heck that you want, you are unfaithful in the things that he's called you to do, you are in danger of being cut off. And that's not a picture that's just like, oh, maybe I'll still make it into the kingdom or whatever. No, cut off. This is what Jesus is actually saying here. There's no caveats. There's no sort of plan Bs. This is what he's saying. So we ought to pay attention. There's another category of people who are ignorant, who know the master's will, but they do not get ready. They're just not living in sin. So they know who Jesus is. They know the master is coming, but they're not doing the things that he's called. They're not doing evil, and they're not making themselves kind of the master in his place, like the unfaithful servant. They know Jesus is coming back, but they don't do anything about it. And it says they will be beaten with many blows. It's this, again, we're not meant to take this literally. This is an image of, how we ought to view and act in light of Jesus' return. And then he gives a fourth example of the one who does not know that who Jesus is, that the master's business, but ends up doing the things that he is supposed to be doing. Well, then it ends up better for that person. Someone who has no idea, but is doing the things that they're called to do. You might think of this as like a new Christian or something that is just put their trust in Jesus. They don't really know what it means to follow Jesus yet, but they're still acting faithfully. Well, that's great. And then Jesus ends by saying, whoever has been given much, much will be demanded, and the one who's been entrusted much will be asked. This is a challenge for every person who puts their trust in Jesus. and that Jesus isn't just happy for us to say, yep, I follow Jesus, that's great, and now I can do whatever I want. But Jesus has commissioned us as his servants, as followers, with a job to do, to carry on his work, to continue to love and show kindness and generosity, and to preach the gospel to those that don't know it. But if we don't do that, if we instead decide, I'm the boss, Jesus is not coming back, I'm just going to do whatever I want. Or we think, well, Jesus may come back, but I'm just going to do my own thing, or I don't really know what I should be doing. Well, this is a stark warning for us to think about how we're living and how we're responding to Jesus. So the challenge for you and I today is to think about our own walk and our own life. Because this story is true of us. Jesus has died. He's resurrected. He's gone, ascended into heaven, and one day he will return again. What are you and I doing now in that in-between space? Are we being faithful servants, carrying out the master's wishes and obeying him? Or are we making life just about us? Are we being greedy and putting ourselves as the master and serving ourselves? Or are we people who just float through life and sure, we believe in Jesus, we believe he's coming back, but we don't really want to put our faith into practice? So this is a warning for all of us, and the challenge is to examine our life and say, well, out of these four servants, which one do we identify with the most? And if the answer is not the good and faithful servant, maybe there's some changes that we ought to think about making. I'll leave you with those thoughts, and we'll catch you next time. Bye.